This is Zach with the Self-Reliance channel. In this video I want to show you how I converted two 40-foot shipping containers into a 2-bedroom space. I am an accidental YouTuber. I started putting videos on YouTube because I wanted to show friends and family how I'm building the half-a-mile road by myself, and also how I'm building the shipping container house that I designed myself. In the process, I realized that more people are watching the videos, and I feel a greater sense of responsibility to make better videos. This video is about the construction of bedrooms 2 and 3. I combined two shipping containers to form one space for the 2 bedrooms. I've already published a video about the construction of bedroom number 4 and also the master bedroom wing. This video will show you how I cut the walls out, beef up the rigidity of the structure so that we have a strong and safe space. My structural design for this space is very simple. I'm going to put 3 steel tubes right in the middle of the shipping containers on either side. They are going to correspond to the closet walls and bedroom walls, such that when the drywall and the framing are done, you will never see the steel tubes. But each steel tubing has a yield strength of about 46,000 pounds, so all 6 tubes will give the roof such support that this is going to be a very strong and safe space. By this point, I've improved my welding skills quite a bit so I can weld tubes to the thin walls without any issues. For the horizontal beam reinforcement, I'm welding together 2 pieces of 1x2 steel tubing. They used to belong to one long piece, but I had to cut them into 2 pieces to haul them home on my little 4x8 Harbor Freight trailer. But welding these 2 pieces together is pretty simple and easy. Okay, I am going to try something that's really crazy. This beam up there is pretty heavy. It's well over 24 feet long, and I'm by myself. I think I can do it myself. We'll see how it goes. My thought process is basically this. I'm going to create a system with 2x10s to actually push it up gradually, slowly, and we'll see how that works. I'm sure you've noticed that I've used a strong rope to form a safety net. I used the hooks in the shipping container to tie the rope to the steel beam such that if the steel beam happens to fall, it wouldn't come down on me. So it's a safety measure. I then tack welded the beam to the top of the shipping container before I removed the 2x10s. Here I'm inspecting the welds. I have to say that even though my welding skills have improved greatly, I'm not a great welder. I have a bachelor's, 2 masters, and a doctoral degree, but I wouldn't be able to pass any welding test because my welds are just not great. But I have great patience. I would check my welds, and if they are not good, I would grind the welds away and do it again and again if necessary. I've now moved to the other shipping container where I am welding 2 short pieces of the steel tubing together to form a longer piece. This will be used for the horizontal support. I'm using the same hoist and support system by using ropes and the 2x10 lumber. I've introduced in this process another element. I've added some very thin blue nylon ropes. You're going to see how I use that for safety. My friends and neighbors have always volunteered to help me with things, but I am kind of independent, and I always think that I can find a solution to very tricky things. I saved those blue nylon ropes from the hay bales when I was seeding my lawn. When I was saving them, I thought I would never use them again, but I guess I'm using them. And as a matter of fact, I've used them in a lot of other applications. So save your ropes.
If this lifting mechanism fails, when the beam falls, the beam will be caught by the blue ropes.
You have to be careful what kind of advice you get from certain people. There's this welder who told me that I don't have to grind the paint away before I weld for what I'm doing. What I've realized is that if you grind the paint away, the welds will just stick so much easier. Here's something that I did that can be problematic down the road, or it is something that I didn't do. I didn't weld the horizontal support for the full length of the 40-foot container. I only welded a 24-footer at the top, and then I welded the 24-footer on the other side, and they're overlapping each other in the middle. I thought with the 3 steel columns in the middle supporting the roof, it would be good. Now, down the road, this causes me a little bit of a problem, and I'll tell you later about it. But I was so eager to start cutting the walls, so I went right to it. I'm putting a laser level to the beam to check the deflection or the sagging of the roof. I would do this very frequently down the road. As you will see, I want to make sure that I don't have any deformity at the very top, and I can tell you down the road, actually, this gave me some worries. I can't say I'm proud of the welding job I did in this space. I actually did a far better job with bedroom number 4 and the master bedroom. If you watch those videos, you could tell that I did a very detailed and thorough job to make sure that there is zero deflection in the roof. But here, I still kept grinding and welding the spots to make sure that the welds would hold. With a section of the wall cut out, I made sure that I welded the 2 beams for the 2 shipping containers together right in the middle, such that it forms a kind of a letter frame structure like the frame of a truck. Whenever I get the chance, whenever I have the room, I would make sure that I would connect the 2 shipping containers in all the joints I can find, from the top to the bottom. This welder plasma cutter combo has served me really well. It is not an expensive tool. I got it for about $500 from Amazon. And it has broken down on me a few times, but I've been able to fix all the problems. This machine does create a lot of fumes when I use it, so I would have my windows open in the dead of the winter, and I would always wear a respirator to protect my lungs. I usually cut the walls into sections that are narrower than 3 feet. It's easier to carry them out that way. Also, when I reuse them to build a shed like I did with one shed, I find it easier to use these sections to weld them together to build a strong wall. My cutting process is fairly simple. I usually start cutting the bottom of the walls, because I don't want the whole weight of the wall sitting on it if I cut the top first. So that is the first step. Then I would cut the sides, and then I will go to the top. You can see that the plasma cutter throws a lot of sparks all around. It is definitely a fire hazard. I have actually accidentally started 2 fires in the yard when the grass was dry when I was cutting holes for windows. So if you're using a plasma cutter, I hope you exercise caution. With the walls almost cut out at this end, I was worried about the deflection in the roof, so I put a laser to the beam. I also put marks on the beam where the laser is. These marks will help me to check on the deflection as I cut more sections out to make sure that the deflection is not too much. Carrying the wall sections out is always an exercise for me. I'm just glad that my core strength is good enough for me to twist my body around like that to carry those sections through the narrow opening of that door. I got into a good rhythm of cutting and checking for deflection and carrying the wall sections out. Every now and then you hear a French word through the respirator when I bump into something, but it was a good process and I got it done pretty quickly. You can see the fan in the window. This was the end of the winter. It was very cold still, and yet I had the fan on to push the fumes out.
So I marked those spots because I am still worried about the sagging of the top. I don't think it will sag, but the markings there will assure me that all the welding, all the support, all the beefing up of the top is working. So that side has worked really well. We're going to work on this side.
As I moved to work on the other side of the containers, here's where I could have done things better. Do you remember that I said I would have 6 columns in the middle to support the roof? Well, I put in 3 columns, but I should have put in 3 more columns right here, but I didn't. And that is going to cost me all kinds of concerns, worries, and hesitation down the road. Cutting the walls out at this end of the shipping containers was pretty easy. I followed the same process. It was going pretty smoothly. I was checking for roof deflection as I was cutting the walls out. Gradually, I noticed a 1/4 inch sag, and I knew I had to do something about it. The very first thing I did was to seek wisdom of the crowd. I posted my questions about the roof deflection in my Facebook account and also in some of the groups. The most consistent answer that came back was that I shouldn't worry about it because for a 40-foot span, there is going to be some deflection. The most interesting answer that came back to me was from a Facebook friend who told me about the formula L divided by 360. That is the formula that says that for a certain span, this is how much deflection that is allowed. I used that formula and found out that for a 40-foot span, my allowable deflection is 1.33 inches. But I wasn't going to take any chances, so I used a 4x4 column and a 20-ton bottle jack to jack up the roof just slightly so I can add more welds all around to beef up the structure. When the framers came in to do some other framing work, I asked them to frame the end of the shipping containers. They were efficient, they did a great job of it, but I didn't ask them to finish the framing of the space even though the space is ready. I just felt that I needed to do more welding, and also I noticed something else, which I will explain in a little bit. As I was doing all the welding, I finally had the opportunity to add horizontal support at the very top throughout the 40-foot span on this side of the shipping containers. I put a laser beam to it, and all the welds and all the reinforcements have actually acted really well to beef up the structure to make sure that there's no roof sag for this container at least. I decided to also add more columns in the middle to support the structure a little bit before I do any more welds to beef up the structure. So that is the work that I was doing at this point. At the same time, I also noticed something very odd, and I'll explain that in a little bit.
This area has the biggest dip. That represents 1/4 inch drop. I jack it up without even cutting the welds. With the level, would actually the center actually be raised a little bit? I'm hoping that would happen. And if that's the case, that's an indication that the jacking is working. So the realization today is very simple. What happened was that imperceptibly, about a 1/4 inch, maybe no more than 1/2 inch, about a 1/4 inch sag has happened to the container on this side for this container, right in the middle. For some reason, it got damaged. It basically folded up on both ends. So right in the middle, there is a 1/4 inch to about 1/2 inch sag. I noticed that I never noticed before until I cut all the walls out, because with all the walls in place, you wouldn't notice it. But now I've cut it out, and also I was paying attention to the roof. In the middle, there is a sag. I thought I caused it. I didn't. The damage caused it because right in the middle on the floor, you can see the edge of the container. This container is lower than the other edge than the container on the other side. The roof has sagged as well. So I didn't cause it, and I'm trying to correct it. Worry about the roof, but in the end, I will spray foam the roof to a grade of 1/8 of an inch per foot, and I think that's going to solve the problem. But it's just the kind of unsettling feeling in me, and I want to make it perfect. And so that kind of desire is driving me to want to do something about it. So I've been walking around this thing for days and days, trying to strategize. Yeah. must have been a major force that really sank the middle of this container. Must be really heavy loads right in the middle and not anywhere else. Or it could have just been bent for some reason. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could take the simple approach, which is reasonable, and do it differently, right? What I could simply do is to add the reinforcement beam up there, which I aim to do anyway, and that would give it a lot of strength. Second option is to cut the welds between the two beams that connect the two containers together, and then jack up this side a little bit. And the sag is not very much.
Eventually, I took the simple approach. I added the support beam at the very top on this side of the shipping container. I welded the beam to the very top very carefully. I made sure that the contact point between the beam and the existing container top is really solid. So I would use 2x8 lumber to force the contact between the reinforcement beam and the top of the shipping container. I took my time to put in the welds, and in the end I thought it was a very rigid structure. I also added 3 columns on this side of the shipping container in the middle, so the structure is really rigid and sound. The thing is that I feel comfortable because each 1x2 steel tubing would give you the yield strength of 46,000 pounds. With 6 columns in there, the roof is not going to go anywhere, it's not going to sag. The deflection is a natural phenomenon, so I was ready to live with it. So when I took the columns out, I had a laser on the top of the shipping container, and there was not a even perceptible drop. So I was happy with it. I did some final welding to make sure every point was secured before I handed it over to the framers. The framers came in and they put in the 2x6 lumber at the very top at 24 inches off center, and they did that very quickly. You also will notice that in the middle of the 2x6 lumber there is a notch that was cut out to accommodate the beams at the very top, to make sure that the 2x6 lumber wouldn't sag too much. I asked them to sister a 2x4 in the middle so that it would support the drywall really well. They did their job beautifully, so I will not explain what they did, and you're going to see from the video that they were efficient and they did a great job of it. Let me quickly explain their process, which I think is very efficient. They would actually cut the lumber to size downstairs and then bring them up. The containers lend themselves very easily to very uniform lumber pieces, so that makes their job a little easier. Even when there is a little bit of sag here or there, that can be shimmed up very easily. So they had a very efficient way of handling all this. You notice that they're using screws to nail the bottom plate to the floor. That's because in that section of the shipping container, the floor is metal. So he used wood to metal screws to fasten the bottom plate to the floor.
That's fine. That's pointing. That's pointing. Let me give you a tour of bedrooms 2 and 3 from the great room. So this is the great room. Now we're entering the space for bedrooms 2 and 3. You can see it's been nicely framed with a nice hallway. It has been wired as well. And entering the bedroom number 2, we have a window with a nice view into the woods. And then we have the space for the closet. It is a pretty wide closet. Going from bedroom number 2 to bedroom number 3 here, it has been wired as well. And it has a window that looks into the woods and the closet space here. You can see the 6 steel tubes supporting the roof. Each steel tube has a yield strength of 46,000 pounds and a tensile strength of 56,000 pounds. So the roof will be safe. The roof is not going anywhere. And this space has turned out to be very nice. So this is a progress update. Spray foam and drywall will be next. And I thank you for watching. We will keep you posted.